Hello and welcome to episode 158 of A Stitch in Time. Today is Thursday, October 22nd, 2020. I am Carol, also known as Knits and Pearls on Ravelry, and I am coming to you from the Fraser Valley of British Columbia, where we are enjoying a spectacular fall day. A very welcome sight after what seems like weeks of rain and overcast skies. If you are tuning in for the first time, a very special hello and welcome to you. Thank you for checking out the podcast. And if you are a returning viewer, hello again and welcome back. I'm so happy to be back with you after not podcasting last week. So it's been a couple of weeks since we last chatted. Thanks to everyone who took the time to reach out and say hello during that time. I always so enjoy hearing from you. And I had to chuckle at several references to Caddyshack and Bill Murray in regard to my little mole experience that I was describing last episode. I've been calling it Mole Wars, and I have an update on the situation later in the episode. I had planned to record last week, but it just didn't work out. It was a short week because we had Thanksgiving Day on Monday, and that set everything back a day. And I just had lots of stuff going on, not as much time to craft as I normally would. So as of last week, I didn't have very much to show you, but thankfully I've had a lot of time in the evenings this week and have managed to actually finish a couple of things and have a few other things on the go. So if you're ready, so am I. So if you haven't already, grab yourself something to drink, get in your comfy chair, pick up your knitting or whatever else you might want to be working on, and yeah, let's go. First things first, I'm really psyched to see so much participation in our 2020 Gal Cal. That is the gift along, craft along that is taking place in the A Stitch in Time podcast Ravelry group. To be eligible to win a prize, all you have to do is join in the chatter and show us what you're working on as far as gifts go. They can be any sort of gift for any sort of occasion in any sort of craft. And you can even be making a gift for yourself. Really the point of it is just to have a place where we can come together in conversation and show off our projects. I love seeing other people's work. So I just so appreciate that so many of you have popped by that thread and have taken part in the chit chat. So I will be drawing a minimum of 3 prizes, one after October, one after November, and one after the end of December, which is when the craft along ends. And I will be awarding project bags made by yours truly. They are still in fabric form as we speak, but I am looking ahead to next week and hoping I might get some sewing done. So as soon as I do, I will take some pictures, put them up in the thread, and of course I'll show them off here on the podcast. Speaking of gifts, I have finished another of my gifts, which makes me very happy. I have completed the mermaid tail socks. It is a pattern by Yarnia Designs, also known as Hannah Woodhead. And these are for my future daughter-in-law who is crazy about mermaids. She even has a couple of mermaid tails that she wears and can swim around in. So these socks seemed like the perfect choice because the yarn I used by Hue Loco, which is their, I think it's their merino sock. Yes, Hue Loco merino sock. The colorway is called Mermaid Tail. And so, of course, I had to find a pattern that had something to do with mermaids in it because I did choose the yarn before I chose the pattern. So why don't I bring them a little closer and give you a closer look. So these are top-down sock, 1x1 twisted rib. They feature this mermaid tail design on the front, and what I sort of think of as a fish scale pattern on the back. And I carried that down into the heel by doing an eye of partridge heel, but the pattern just calls for a regular slip stitch heel. And then I'm not even sure what the pattern called for. I just did my usual rounded toe. So I really love how these turned out. I did make her a pair of slippers the first year that she was sort of around, came into our lives. Maybe that's a better way of putting it. And she did like those a lot. So I'm hoping that she will like socks just as much because, you know, it's a fun gift to make for people. And yeah, so she's never expressed any sort of interest one way or the other. It was my son who asked me to make slippers for her. So I'm hoping that she will enjoy these socks. So I am really happy to have yet another gift done. So these will either be for Christmas or her birthday, which occurs just a few days after Christmas. So yay, another one down. Now these last couple of weeks, unlike the week before that, was not entirely selfless. I did do some selfish knitting this week too. I knew it couldn't last, right? I'm drinking just some Darjeeling tea out of my sister's cup. So I am really happy. I finished the Summertide shawl by Helen Stewart, and I knit this from Earl Grey Yarn Company Darjeeling sock in the Desert Bloom and Patina colorways, which go together very nicely. I bought these last year at Knit City in Vancouver. I don't think I mentioned, I'm not sure if I did mention or not, Knit City was supposed to take place a couple of weeks ago. Normally would have, they didn't have a virtual marketplace like a lot of places do, but they did have some merchandise available for purchase. So I actually bought a couple of project bags, but they're not here yet. So when they get here, I will show them to you. Maybe I did mention it. In any case, here's the Summertide shawl. A little off track there. So did I mention this is by Helen Stewart of Curious Handmade? I can't remember what year it was first published, but it was originally published as a mystery shawl knit along, and so the pattern is still written out in that way. I can't remember exactly where all the different clues fit in, so I won't even try and tell you. What I will tell you is that in the original pattern, the first half of the shawl is done all in one color, and then the second half is done in another. But I looked through a lot of projects and found the ones that I was most drawn to were the ones that had both colors going throughout. You might hear my furnace kick on. Sorry, it's always a little loud, and I forget about it over the summer, but with a little bit cooler weather here, it's been kicking in more and more often during the day. So yeah, I'm a copycat, I freely admit it, and I took sort of a combination of various people's incorporation of the two colors and did my thing here. So you might be able to see, I put in a couple of green garter stripes right before this lace section, and then I striped it a little bit here, and then I bound off also with the patina colorway. So I like the size. It's smaller than I was thinking it was going to be. Part of that might be because I think the pattern called for a 4mm, and I only used a 3.5. I think I started it on a 4 and just found it a little bit too loose for my liking. I tend to like a fairly tightly knit shawl. So that probably accounts for it. But it's a good size. I'm glad it's not much bigger because it's still small enough for me to kind of wear like this, which is how I tend to wear most of my shawls, especially ones that are this size. So what I need now is something to wear it with. I kind of realized I don't think I have any clothing in my wardrobe that remotely matches this shawl, which is kind of crazy but true. So maybe I need to go find a t-shirt or something. Definitely doesn't go with my bright coral lounging top. This is my lounging top by Joji Locatelli that I finished a few weeks ago, in case you're new and wondering. Yeah, so very pleased. I love this shawl. I've had my eye on this one for ages and ages. I'm glad I finally decided to cast it on. I found the right combination of yarns. I think they're just beautiful together. Beautiful alone and beautiful together. Pardon me. Okay, gotta take another sip from my gravelly voice. Okay, where are they? Here they are. Now, from here on out, just looking, yeah, it's all gift knitting from here. So I didn't do too much knitting for myself this week. First up are I'm just trying to find the yarn label here. Here it is. It's my Father's Day socks number 3 for my dear husband, made out of Cascade Heritage Wave in the colorway 501 Plume. And as you can see, it's a color changing yarn that has a marled effect. And as you might surmise, if these are Father's Day socks number 3, that means I have knit socks 1 and 2 already. So I'm pleased to be on the last of these 3. And they're coming along pretty well, actually. I worked on these like over Thanksgiving weekend, and I think last weekend we were sitting around doing something, well, maybe watching some TV or something. So they've gotten a fair bit of attention. I'm going to slip this one onto the sock blocker. So it's a top-down 72 stitch sock, 2x2 rib, plain stockinette, traditional heel flap, gusset, rounded toe. Nothing too excited. Maybe, no, nothing too exciting, I should say. Maybe that's why they call this kind of sock vanilla. I have to laugh as I say that. Pardon me. I would tease my husband about going into Baskin-Robbins with 30 wonderful flavors as their branding went, and he would have vanilla. But good thing he doesn't bore me in real life. I mean, you know what I mean? He's not that a boring person. It's just simple tastes, I guess. I don't know. Sounds terrible. Anyway, there is sock number 1. I really am liking that there seems to be more color changing in this particular colorway than there seemed to be in the last ones that I knit. So it's keeping my interest, seeing the colors kind of changing along the way. So that's 1 pair of socks for him, but wait, there's more. In secret, as in when he's not around, I've been working on a pair of socks for him for Christmas. These are knit from Fiber Nymph Dye Works in the Mountain Tweed colorway, or Mountain Tweed, I think I said that last time too, Mountain Tweed base. There's the label. And this is the Storm Warning colorway. which is a 3-stripe colorway with a dark charcoal and 2 shades of blue. And you can see that ball's getting down there. I did divide this skein in half and indicated on the second skein where to start the cast on, so that I could make them matchy-matchy. But I am actually only working on these socks one at a time, which I'm not sure why. I often will knit one pair concurrently, especially when they do have striping that I want to match, but for whatever reason I didn't do that this time. Anyway, here they are. I have basically same as the last socks, and I have finished the heel flap and I'm now working on the gusset. So that's coming along nicely. Love this tweed. Love working with it, and I just love how it knits up. And these blues are so pretty, especially this deep blue. I love that color. So yeah, those are coming along well. Should have no trouble finishing those before Christmas. So it feels good to be getting some of these things kind of accomplished. And last but not least, I am working on another pair of Fiber Nymph Dye Works socks. This time it is the Swoosh 2.0 base in the colorway So Very Trivial. These are for my younger sister. The colorway is inspired by the game pieces in Trivial Pursuit, and I just always tease her about having a trivial mind because she's very good at remembering obscure facts and figures. So this is sock number 2, which I cast on last night because I finished sock number 1. Now, awesome. Look how fun is that. I love working on these because the colors are just so cheerful. So these are a 60 stitch sock on a 2.25 millimeter needle. The yarn is a little bit of a heavy fingering as opposed to a regular fingering. So I just dropped the number of stitches by 4 and went up to a 2.25 from a 2 millimeter, which is how I usually knit my vanilla socks for sort of my size. My sister's basically, her feet are basically the same as mine are. So instead of a 2x2 rib, I did a 1x1 rib. Again, plain knitting, and I didn't want to disrupt the striping here, so I did an afterthought heel. Only it's not a true afterthought in the sense that A, I put in waste yarn to pick up after, and B, I did it only about an inch past the heel. That's how I like to do my afterthought heels. I find it difficult to place them properly when I do a true afterthought. So I just, as I say, put waste yarn in after knitting this blue stripe, and then I think I knit to about the green, and then I went back and did the heel, and I took yarn from the other end of the ball. Now originally, trying to think, I ended up knitting this heel pretty well 3 times. The first time was that I took the yarn from the other end of the ball, and I think the issue was that it wasn't quite a whole stripe. So I think the stripe that ended up here was about 1 row less. And I decided I wanted it to be more equal to the one before it. So I, plus the colors that were at the other end of the ball were kind of in this range instead. And I wanted it to be brighter because I really like the bright colors in here. So then I wound off a little more, and I started with the orange instead. And then I got almost to the end and realized I was missing a stitch on one of the halves of the needles. I do it on magic loop. So I think I had 1 less stitch on one needle than the other. So I started to just frog back to see where I'd forgotten to decrease. That was my impression, is I'd forgotten to decrease somewhere and I couldn't find it. And I concluded that I had picked them up wrong in the first place, so I took it all the way back to the end again, re-picked up my stitches, and did it over again. I'm actually glad I did, because I did a better job picking up in the corners here than I had the first time around. And so it was worth fixing. Now here's a little tip. I think, yeah, this is the side. Okay, sorry, this is the side where I started picking up. This is the side that I did it. And that picked up quite well there. This side, not as well, but then when I went to weave in my end, I just kind of used the tail of the yarn to close it up a little more and then weave it in. And I have sometimes, if it doesn't pick up nicely on the other side where there is no yarn tail, I'll weave some yarn in, kind of fix it up, and then weave the other end in. So don't be afraid of doing that. There's no reason why you can't. Nobody's really going to look that closely, and to me, I'd rather have a nice looking join than a hole. You know, you want to look good, so that's just a little tip. Another thing that I have sort of done consciously now too is when I weave in my ends, I weave them in across the sock. And what I do is I try and make sure when I pick up for the heel stitches that I do it in such a way that I weave in my ends at the bottom of the leg as opposed to the beginning of the foot. And that way, if there's any discomfort, you know, if you can feel that woven in yarn at all, it's not going to be on the bottom of your foot, it's going to be at the back of your heel, and so you don't notice it as much. And that's just a trial and error thing that I've sort of picked up over the years. In any case, I just knit them down, did my usual rounded toe. So these are more than 50% done now. So definitely enjoying these. These are for my sister's birthday, which is at the end of November. So I've got just over a month to finish it up. So again, shouldn't have any trouble getting that done, thankfully. Yeah, let me just look at my, oh yeah, I was going to talk about something. I need to go run and grab my iPad, so I will be right back to talk about a failed project. So a project I've had on my radar for quite a while is Perfect Blend by Casapinka. And that is an asymmetrical triangular shawl that is knit with either 4 colors of fingering weight yarn or 12 mini skeins. And there are instructions for a small and a large size. At small, I think you need at least 85 yards of a fingering weight, and the larger one, I think you need 100 yards of a fingering weight yarn in 12 colors. So this is the first project that is shown on the project page, and I just love that the vibrant combination, especially at the end there with that kind of acid green and the royal blue and the purple, and then that was knit by Orange Smoothie, it says, that's theirs. Casapinka herself did, just gonna see if I can, this is a look at hers. Again, it has kind of an acid green, oops, sorry, touchy. So it has an acid green and a bright purple again at the end, as well as this bright pink in it. Casapinka used this mini set by Miss Babs. So those were the colors in hers. So I really was inspired by those two projects. And I've had this project page, this pattern page, I should say, open on my computer for ages. And every so often I go in and I look, and sometimes I shop for yarn. And in my mind, I keep thinking, well, you've got so many fingering weight yarn leftovers. Surely you can put together, 12 colors from your sock yarn scraps. And so I think it was early last week, or maybe this week, I can't remember. Might have been over the weekend, actually, I don't know. Doesn't matter. Within the last week or so, I came in here in my craft room and started pulling out all my sock yarn leftovers, which are actually really stored really well. I think it was a couple years ago. I organized them by kind of color, and I have all my solids and tonals in one big zippered, I think it's like a comforter bag, or something that a blanket or a comforter comes in, and then I have all my variegated ones in another one like that. So pulled those out and was looking at them, and then started also pulling some skeins from my stash here and putting together combinations. So I had a combination I thought was great, and I started working on it, and then I changed my mind, and then I started swapping out colors, and I had it all laid out, and I weighed all the skeins so I'd know how much yarn I ended up using of each, and marked them down and things like that, made sure I had enough of each color. Then I started knitting again, and then I wasn't happy with that, and so I rearranged, and I'm not even sure how many times I did that. And I probably began at least 4 versions of it. And I think I got as far as, the first step is to do, you basically work colors 12 through 1, and then you start again with number 2. And I think I got as far as like 12 to 1 a couple of times, and maybe even started working in the next. Long story short is I just could not make up my mind. I wasn't satisfied with what I'd come up with. So in the end, I took it all out, put all my yarn away. My room was covered, and I mean covered. I had things all over the floor and all over my ironing board and chair, and had all my yarn, fingering weight yarn skeins out. I had all the scraps out, and I think in a way it's probably a case of too much, get overwhelmed by choice, and I could not put a combination to my satisfaction. So I kind of got the whole casting it on and knitting it experience out of my blood for now. And I do plan to return to this pattern again one day, because I just think it's cool. It's what I like about it is that it's here, I'll just bring this picture up again. What I like is it's not just that it's different colors of yarn, but after working the initial stripes in which you are alternating garter stitch and garter stitch and stockinette stitch, then you start to do different stitch patterns with different colors. So I think it'll be a really fun one to keep your interest and watch it grow and change. But yeah, this was not the right time. And so I did spend a fair bit of time on it during this past week. But sadly have nothing to show for it, nothing to show you for it, and nothing to show myself for it, except some pleasant hours of time, because my husband was kind of laughing at me. he's got to know me over the years, right? And I said, actually, it's not bad, because that's one of the parts I love the most is planning projects. So in a way, I was having a ball working out different color combinations. I was just frustrated because none of them really spoke to me once I actually knit them up. So anyway, that was part of what happened this week. Other than that, well, it's been 2 weeks actually. So as I mentioned, a week ago Monday was Thanksgiving here in Canada. So we had planned some very atypical, I guess, atypical, not, I was going to say untypical, but I don't think that's a word, atypical celebrations because of COVID-19 and none of us being, well, we are not in any of our kids' bubbles. So we kept everything safe and just did a couple of socially distanced get-togethers with them. So Saturday we went over to our daughter's house and had a visit out on their back deck, which is covered, thankfully, because there was a little bit of rain that fell while we were there. And they were having their Thanksgiving dinner the next day, and they were cooking, smoking a roast. My son-in-law did that for the first time and apparently turned out really well. So the next day, Sunday, I cooked a turkey, and we had our 2 boys and our future daughter-in-law come over, and we sat in our backyard under our covered deck with the fire table going, and it was pouring. Thankfully we had that, and we all got a little bit chilled. So I don't know how much longer we're going to be able to do that. Depends on the weather. But we got to have a visit and then sent them home with turkey and stuffing and gravy. And we had bought everyone a pumpkin pie so that they all had pumpkin pie for dessert. They were going to go pick up potatoes at my one son's place, and then they were going over to the other son's and cooking them there and then having dinner together. So I felt good knowing the 3 of them were going to be together for Thanksgiving dinner, at least. So then once they were gone, cooked up the rest of our dinner and had that. Made soup right away, so I saved half the bones for my daughter-in-law to be. She had never made soup stock before, so she was excited to try that out. So she did she turned hers into a cream of turkey soup. I did mine into a turkey noodle soup, which we enjoyed the next day for lunch and for a few days after. And I put some of the soup stock in the freezer for future use. We enjoyed some turkey sandwiches. We also then took some leftover turkey over to our daughter's place so she and her husband could have turkey sandwiches. The kids didn't want them. So, was not our usual, but we got to get together, and that was the main thing. I know Thanksgiving is coming up in about a month in the US, and I'm sure many of you are going to have to be creative of how you get together too. It's just the way it is right now. We've had a very productive couple of weeks. I think I mentioned a few weeks ago that I was really focused this fall on getting some things done. I really felt like during the first go round of COVID, self-isolation, that I think I squandered a lot of time. At the same time, I think, well, it was the state of mind I was in. I gave myself permission to not worry about getting jobs done. But this time around, I just want to be more purposeful. So I've been making note of certain things that have I'm going to form that sentence, and it's not going to be grammatically correct. There are things around the house that have needed to be done. Is that right? Doesn't sound right, but you know what I mean. Lingering jobs, unfinished work. So we, I think it was that Thanksgiving weekend, I think it was, that we finally got around to replacing the curtain rod and, or not curtain rod, closet rod and shelf in one of our spare rooms. The one we had put up wasn't anchored in a stud anywhere. Instead, it was into the drywall with those, can't think of what they're called, the reinforcements anyway. And eventually they gave way. And it wasn't really the style of rack that I wanted anyway. This one was like a shelf, a wire shelf that came down and had slots where you could hang the clothes. I have one like that in my laundry area, which is great for there, but in a closet, I really wanted something I could more easily be able to just, push the clothes this way or push the clothes that way, space them out. Every time you wanted to move something on this one, you had to pick it up and move it to the next slot. And for some reason, when we were putting that in a few years ago, I don't think we could find the kind that is in every other closet in our house. Anyway, in any case, we went looking and sure enough found one similar to what we already have in the other closets. We were able to mount these things into studs, have a more solid, just a solid closet rod and a wooden shelf. So that was great because we've had the clothes from that closet laying out on the spare room bed for probably a few months now. And true confessions, most of them are still lying there because I haven't gotten around to actually going back and hanging them all back up. But I can when I'm ready. That's the important thing. So while we were in the hardware store looking at the shelving options for the closets, I saw these spice racks that you could mount to the inside of your cupboard door. And I have had for ages, I've had spices in like 3 different places in my kitchen. The most recent being on my kitchen counter, just a mishmash of some odd bottles. What happened when I got my Instant Pot last year is I started making some recipes that called for spices that I didn't already own. And so I had bought some and had little spice jars. Some of them I had bought in bulk, so I just had bought these odd spice jars to put them in. And they were cluttering up my counter and my cupboard where I keep, some of them was kind of a mess. The cupboard where I kept the rest was a mess. And I thought, oh, it would be so nice to have them more organized and to have them on the back of a cupboard door. They're not taking up any shelf space. And so I bought a couple of these racks and we put those up. And then in going through and reorganizing everything, well, I ended up cleaning out all of my food cupboards and reorganizing them, freeing up some space, and then also realized that I still needed some more containers. I didn't really like those spice jars that I had bought. What I've had for years are these Tupperware ones. I like them because they seal really well. They keep your spices fresh. They have one side is like the one that you sprinkle. The other side is like one you can scoop from. The lids come off easily if you need to get a bigger spoon in there to spoon it out. So I have had 4 large and 8 small of these for, gosh, probably 25 years, maybe more. So I went looking to see if I could find more of these, and they're not discontinued, but I think they only make the large ones now in Tupperware. Long story short, I came across a person on Etsy that had a set of these, so it's a little bit different red, newer ones, I think. she had 6 large and 6 small. So that would give me 12 more containers. So I ordered them from her and they came yesterday. So I spent yesterday afternoon putting my remaining spices into these kind of containers. I bought some new labels for them too, and reorganizing again. So now all my spices are in 2 places. On the top shelf of this little narrow cupboard, I have a bunch of these all stacked there, and with a few loose spices that we had bought in Italy, and I have them in little bags and in Ziplocs to keep them fresh. So they don't need a container because I'm not going to be able to replace them. And then the rest are all on that spice rack, hanging on the back of the cupboard door. So, and I just love it. Now I open up my food cupboards and there's everything so nicely arranged. I know it won't last because it's me and I'm not always good about putting things back as nicely as I've organized them in the first place. But I do feel like they're going to be easier to keep organized this time around. I was also thrilled because it freed up some space. I have a little microwave cart and I had my bread maker and slow cooker sitting on top of it for the longest time. And then I got my Instant Pot. And I'm not ready to give up my slow cooker. So I had the Instant Pot on there too, plus some of the accessories, and it was all cluttered. So this freed up some room. I was able to put the slow cooker in this cupboard. So now I just have and the accessories for the Instant Pot. So now I just have the Instant Pot and the bread maker sitting on this microwave cart. Again, much tidier to look at. So I'm feeling really good about finally kind of getting my kitchen reorganized because I've had that on my to-do list for a long time. Another thing is I have just to the right of our big doorway that comes into our dining area of our kitchen, I've had 3 plates hanging up there for a few years. And I think it was probably a year and a half ago, I noticed one day that one of them, the hanger was coming off. So I took it down and there it has sat in my china cabinet waiting for me to order a new hanger thing ever since. So I finally got around to ordering it. So this is the plate. I actually have 4 of these. My daughter gave these to me years ago. And it's these disc hangers. And they're like a woven fabric that has glue on it. And you wet the glue, and you wait a bit, you wet the glue some more, wait a bit, then you stick it on the back and wait overnight. And then you can hang it from the little hanger, and then you don't have anything that shows on the front. So just the plate shows. I don't know if the problem was that the plate was too heavy. I have 2 other plates that have been hanging since I originally hung them. No problem. They haven't come back. They haven't come off. Like nothing's happened. And I noticed so I ordered 3-inch hangers. And when I pulled this one out of the cupboard to replace it, I realized it had only had a 2-inch one on. And so maybe it just wasn't, it said it would hold up to 6 inches, but maybe it was just on the borderline, and over time this kind of gave away. It was peeling away from the plate. Happily it didn't fall and break. Read some reviews on Amazon. No, Amazon? Yeah, I think I got these at Amazon. Anyway, I've read some reviews that were not favorable. People lost like really good plates. But so far my other ones have been fine. And none of them are expensive anyway. And so if they fell and broke, it's not the end of the world. If you had like $100+ plate, you might be more hesitant. I think 2 of them came out of like thrift shops, and the other one is we bought up in Barkerville, which is a tourist. Well, it's a British Columbia provincial park, I believe. It was originally a gold town, Gold Rush Town, and it's been refurbished, and it's not quite a living history site, but kind of. And when we went there last time, they were selling the dinnerware from the old hotel. It was not authentic, or did not date from that time. They had used dishes that looked like they were from the mid 1800s, but they were not. But I guess they replaced them, and they were just selling off the old stuff for souvenirs. And so I had bought a cream and sugar and a little plate, so I hung the plate up. Gee, that's a lot of talking about one little plate. Anyway, very, very happy. Now all three can live there together again. Just silly little jobs that don't take that long, and yet, we put them off for months and months and months. Okay, just looking, a couple other things. One is we have a provincial election coming up this coming weekend. And for the first time, I don't know if they've ever had vote by mail before, but this year they did, and that's how we decided to vote. So we have already cast our ballot, and it has gone back to where it needs to go to be counted. So I know many of you in the United States are going through that whole experience right now. So it's nice to have that option and not have to go out among other people to the polls if you don't choose to do so. We've narrowly missed having a federal election. I think it was yesterday that it was decided we wouldn't. It's very different from in the United States, where you have one every 4 years, no matter what, where our prime minister's terms can be up to 4 years, I believe, but an election can basically be called any time. And so anyway, glad we're not going to have to deal with that. Let's just put it that way. I got my flu shot last week, I think it was. Is it last week? Yes, last week, for the first time ever. They're recommending people get them this year because of COVID, and I imagine the reason is just to then make, hopefully, the flu season not as bad while they deal with COVID. So, yeah, didn't hurt at all. Little pinprick, and no ill effects other than a little bit of an achy arm for a very short time. So that's good. We got a call yesterday. I think I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, we've had tons of rain, so our concrete work has been delayed because of it. But got a call yesterday to say that they're hoping to start early next week. So cross your fingers that happens. We're really excited about having it done. So hopefully the weather cooperates, and that's not a problem. All right, now it's time for an update on mole wars, as I've been calling the situation. So if you did not watch last episode, I went on and on about how frustrated we've been with recent mole activity in our yard and our unsuccessful attempts to control it. So we've had moles for years and years, almost as long as we've lived here, which is 31 years. Somewhere around maybe five or 6 years after we moved in, they built a couple of condo units about half a block up the road on an old field. And my husband swears that the moles that used to live there migrated to our yard and have been there ever since. That's around the time when we started experiencing mole activity. And we also back onto farmer fields. So, and we have a wet backyard. So we have all the right conditions to have them. It's no surprise that we do. And even though we didn't like it, we never took any active measures to do something about it until a couple of years ago when we had our backyard landscaped. And literally within days of it being completed, we had fresh molehills popping up in like right through the brand new sod or in the middle of the brand new garden. And it just was really frustrating. So we had tried a trap that was recommended by our local garden center. And last spring, Cameron actually attended a workshop put on by that company that taught some things about mole behavior and also then how to use the trap. So with, renewed effort, we tried again. We also tried the smoke bombs. Nothing's ever worked. We've never had a trap set off. We've never had caught a mole. And most recently, as I mentioned last week, we had twice a fresh molehill pop up in the very hole where the trap was set, and it didn't set off the trap. So, and then the last straw for me was, while in the process of smoothing out and reseeding all these places where the moles had popped up, I had one particular hole that within hours was disturbed again, and I'd smooth it down, and an hour later a new mound would pop up. And that's when it got personal. Someone asked me if I would take pictures or show you what I was talking about. I'll just put a few pictures in here. Like the other day I looked out our front yard, and forget the garden because that you can at least smooth over. There's over 20 bare patches in our front yard from molehills. There's another spot in our backyard near the garden. I forget how many I counted there. There's so many. And it's just so frustrating because you literally will flatten it down and reseed it, and, boom, within days it might be disturbed again. So, once that day that I was talking about last week, my husband said, I think we're just going to have to call someone in. And I kind of thought, okay, let's see what else I can find online, see if there's something we haven't tried. So I came across the website that was talked about this other kind of trap that I'd never tried before. And it was Tomcat. And read about this mole trap, and it looks like that. And rather than having to dig out the most recent molehill and dig out the tunnel and set these traps in the tunnels leading off from this main hole, this you set from above into the tunnel. The idea is that the mole comes along, triggers a sensor, and then these jaws come down and get it. But what do we have to lose? So I ordered this from Amazon, and it came last Thursday. So when Cam got home from work, we went out and set it. And when it's been set off, the top pops up like that. So you can tell it's been triggered. So I woke up Friday morning, looked out our bedroom window, and darned if that thing hasn't been set off. So I was very cautiously optimistic, and I went out to look, and it had been set off, but I realized that we had set it incorrectly. Instead of putting the jaws across the tunnel, we had put them parallel, so when they went off, they just went off on either side of the tunnel, not across it and grab the mole. So even though we were not successful, at least it gave me hope that, okay, it can be the mole activities there, it can set it off. If that had been set properly, we might have, caught a mole. So over the next few days, we set it up in the front yard in a couple of different new holes. And I'm really impatient. I kept looking out to see if it had been done, and then we have a fresh one pop up like beside it or nearby, and then I'd move it to that one. So Monday morning, there was a fresh hill in a hole that had been active a couple of times in the past few days. And so I decided to set it up there. And Monday afternoon, looked out and it had been set. Went out, caught myself a mole. It sounds so mean. I shouldn't be happy at a creature's death, but I can't tell a lie. I was really happy. You know, we call some animals pests for a reason. While I don't wish any animal harm, really, in this case, I could live with it. Hate me for that if you want. That's just how I felt about it. We've been so frustrated. So I immediately, after I emptied the trap, cleaned up where I had the trap in and stuff, I took it to the backyard and set it up in the freshest hole back there. And since that time, it has not been set off, and there has been no evidence of mole activity. It's almost 72 hours now. So it looks like we got the little critter that's been doing all the damage. My understanding from everything that I've read is most of the time it is just a single mole that will do all that damage. They're generally solitary creatures except during mating season. And the young do not live more than, I think, about a month and a half or so with their mother before they go off to their own territories. So now, of course, there's every chance that a new mole will come and take up this old mole's territory, but at least I feel like we have a tool now that will kind of nip that problem in the bud. So cross fingers, cross toes, cross arms and legs, that's the end of our mole problem for this season. It would be really nice if the grass had a chance to grow in over the winter and spring, and we could start off fresh next year. So I can't believe, when I think of all the years that we've had a mole issue, and for the past 2 years that we've been trying to get a handle on it, I can't believe that just from Thursday to Monday we solved that issue. So yeah, there's your update. I thought about putting that as my something good, but that seemed a little bit cruel to celebrate a creature's death as something good. So I changed my mind. And I decided my something good for this week is the fall colors. As I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, today has just been spectacular. Beautiful sunny day. We have fresh snow on the mountains thanks to all the rain we've had. So with the sun on it, looked so beautiful. Got a picture here of our red maple trees and the sun-peaked mountains. I went for a walk this morning, and numerous trees are just so beautiful right now. Some are past their prime, as is we have another tree in our backyard that's completely leafless now. But there are many still are in the process of changing or have changed. And yeah, just a beautiful, beautiful fall day today. So that's my something good. And on that much happier note, I will bid you farewell. Next week is kind of up in the air. So I am not sure when I'm going to record next, but hopefully next week, if not the week after. I can't right now pin down an exact time for a new episode. So yeah, hopefully our concrete work does begin next week as it's supposed to. And I'm so excited to see those finishing touches done to our, especially our backyard, and hopefully no moles come along and spoil it. So take care until we talk next, and I'll see you soon. Bye.